She was bound to a wooden stake, her children tied beside her. The crowd gathered, torches in hand. Before the flames touched her body, the executioners set fire to her children's pyres first. She was forced to watch as the fire devoured them, their screams piercing the night while her own cries were swallowed by smoke. This was the fate of Jeanne de Eschires, a mother condemned in the madness of Europe's witch hunts. In an age when fear was currency and suspicion a plague, a sentence was handed down that chills the soul. It was for a mother, condemned not only to die, but to witness the ruin of everything she held dear before the flames would take her, too. This is the story of a woman we'll call Jeanne de Eschires. Now, you won't find the name Jeanne de Eschires in any meticulously kept, yet often incomplete, historical record. Her specific story, as we tell it, isn't a single documented event. It's an archetype, a story woven from the countless unrecorded tragedies that befell real women and their families. While history is silent on her name, it's deafening in its testimony to the horrors of her time. Her story stands for the thousands whose accusations and executions were so common they were simply lost, a symbol of the profound injustice that swept across Europe. This is her story, a sham trial, a brutal accusation, and a community that turned on its own. To understand what happened to a woman like Jeanne, you have to step into her world. Picture rural France in the 16th century. This isn't the France of Parisian salons and philosophy. That's still centuries away. This is a land of deep forests, small, isolated villages, and a faith that is absolute. Life is governed by the seasons, the harvest, and the word of the local priest. Here, the world is a stage for a constant, terrifyingly real battle between God and the devil. In this world, nothing bad is an accident. A sudden illness, a stillborn calf, a failed crop, it's not nature, it's malice. And that malice has a name, maleficarum, or harmful magic. The devil, they believed, walked among them, eager to recruit souls to do his bidding. And his favorite recruits, the preachers warned, were women. Making things even more dangerous was the fact that the law was a patchwork of local rules. There was no single, national law for witchcraft. Justice was often handed out by local courts, far from the influence of higher authorities like the Parliament of Paris. While the Parliament, the High Court covering northern France, was known to be more skeptical and often refused to confirm death sentences for witchcraft, its reach was limited. In the forgotten corners of the kingdom, local lords and magistrates held the power of life and death, and they were much more likely to be swayed by popular panic. Many of these courts simply ignored Paris, and the true number of their verdicts is lost to time. This was Jeanne's world. Before the whispers started, she was just another woman in the village. A mother, maybe a widow, trying to raise her children. Perhaps she was a midwife or a healer who knew about herbs and folk remedies, skills that could one day be twisted into proof of a demonic pact. In a society where women were viewed with suspicion, especially without a husband's protection, her independence could be a death sentence. She was ordinary, which made her vulnerable. She was a woman, which made her a target. The intellectual fuel for this fire had been laid down decades earlier. Books like the infamous Malleus Maleficarum, The Hammer of Witches, and Jean Bodin's influential 1578 work, De la Demonomanie des Sorciers, on the demon mania of witches, gave a kind of twisted theological and legal permission for the horror. These weren't fringe pamphlets. They were respected texts that argued for a merciless approach to what was seen as a conspiracy against God and state. They instructed magistrates that witchcraft was a crime in exceptum, an exceptional crime that demanded exceptional measures, including torture and the suspension of normal legal protections. It was a perfect storm, a terrified public, a legal system that empowered local courts to act on that fear, and an intellectual class providing the justification. All it needed was a spark. And for a woman like Jeanne, that spark could be anything. A jealous neighbor, a spurned advance, a child's bad dream. Any private grudge could become a public accusation, and once made, it was nearly impossible to escape. It always started with something small, a shadow of misfortune falling over a neighbor's house. Imagine a long, brutal winter followed by a wet, miserable spring. The crops are stunted. A farmer's prize cow, healthy just yesterday, is found dead. A child falls into a fever that no prayer can break. The village priest thunders from the pulpit about God's displeasure. At the tavern, men mutter. At the well, women whisper. Who lives apart? Who seems different? The whispers circle like vultures until they find a place to land. They land at Jeanne de Eschires' door. Why her? Maybe she'd argued with the farmer over a stray chicken. Maybe the sick child's mother once asked Jeanne for a remedy that didn't work, and her gratitude turned sour. Or maybe Jeanne was just there, a convenient scapegoat for a community drowning in its own fear. The murmur grows into a confident roar. She looked at my cow. She muttered something as she passed my fields. My child screamed when she walked by. In the heat of fear, coincidence becomes proof. The local magistrate is called. He's a man of his time, convinced he's doing God's work. He listens to the accusers, their stories feeding his own paranoia. An inquiry is launched, not to find out if a crime was committed, but to prove the guilt of the woman already condemned in their minds. The arrest is a public show meant to terrify. Armed men burst into Jeanne's home, not with questions, but with shackles. Her children, seeing their mother seized, cling to her, their cries echoing down the lane. To the accusers, this isn't a family being torn apart. It's a nest of vipers being cleaned out. The children aren't innocents. They're tainted by their mother's evil, potential heirs to her demonic pact. They are all taken away. The door to their small life is kicked shut, and the door to a stone cell is thrown open. There's no presumption of innocence here. In the twisted logic of the witch hunt, the accusation itself is evidence. The trial is just a formality on the way to a conviction. The legal process Jeanne faced was a labyrinth with only one exit, the stake. The system was inquisitorial, meaning the judge was also the investigator, and his goal wasn't to weigh evidence, but to secure a confession. Jeanne is brought before the tribunal. The room is cold, shadows dancing in the torchlight. The judges are grim-faced men who see themselves as soldiers of God. They aren't interested in her denials. To them, her pleas of innocence are just the devil's cunning. The evidence is a jumble of superstition and grudges. Neighbors testify she could curdle milk with a look. A farmer blames her for his sick livestock. Someone swears they saw her with a black cat, believed to be a demonic familiar. There is no physical proof, no credible witness to an actual crime, only hearsay and fear. Then, the court turns to the children. Terrified and confused, they are separated from their mother and brought before the imposing judges. The questions are relentless and leading. Did you see your mother fly out the chimney? Did a man in black visit your home? A child's frightened silence is taken as hiding something. A confused yes, just to make the question stop, is recorded as a confession. While children were rarely executed alongside their parents, using them in trials was a known and cruel tactic. Their coerced, nonsensical testimony becomes the final nail in their mother's coffin. Next comes the physical ordeal. A confession was called the Queen of Proofs, and courts were authorized to use any means to get one. Jeanne is stripped and searched for the devil's mark, a mole or birthmark believed to be insensitive to pain. A pricker jabs her body with a needle. If she doesn't cry out, it's considered proof of her pact with Satan. When that's not enough, the instruments of torture are brought in. Methods like the strappado, which dislocated the shoulders, or boots that crushed the legs, were designed to inflict maximum pain. Under such relentless agony, the human spirit breaks. A confession is the only way to make the pain stop. Broken in body and spirit, Jeanne finally gives them what they want. She confesses to it all, flying to a Sabbath, dancing with the devil, casting spells. She may even be forced to name others, pulling more innocents into the madness. This confession, extracted under torture, is read in court as the undeniable truth. Her fate is sealed. Sentencing day is a public spectacle. The whole community gathers, a mix of grim duty and morbid curiosity. The verdict is read in a loud, clear voice. Jeanne Eschires is guilty of diabolical witchcraft. The sentence is death by fire, a punishment meant to purify the witch's stain from the earth. But the court, in its cruelty, adds another layer of torment. To make an example of her, she will not be the first to die. The sentence dictates that her children, tainted by her evil, will be executed before her very eyes. Now, was this exact sequence, a mother forced to watch her children burn first, ever documented in France? No, but it represents the ultimate horror of an age where a condemned witch's entire family was often destroyed. Historic cases from Germany, like that of the Pappenheimer family, show this kind of unimaginable cruelty did happen. The public execution was pure theater, meant to instill terror, and this would have been its most terrifying act. The procession to the execution site is a slow, agonizing journey. Jeanne is bound to her own stake, forced to watch as her children are tied to theirs. She can offer no comfort, no final embrace. She can only watch as the executioners approach with their torches. The wood is lit. The flames roar to life. The scene descends into an inferno of smoke and suffering. The screams of her children are the last sound she hears. Only after their pyres are blazing do the flames lick at her own feet. Burning was an agonizing death, but for Jeanne, the physical torment was surely secondary to the psychological agony she had already endured. As the fire consumes her, it's not just taking a life. It's erasing a family in the name of a twisted faith. What happens after the smoke clears? For the village, the execution is a release. The evil has been purged. Life, for a time, returns to normal. But fear rarely dies with the victim. The witch hunts were a contagion. One execution often just fueled the next. Jeanne's story, though an archetype, represents a period of intense persecution that lasted for centuries. Tens of thousands of people across Europe, mostly women, were executed for witchcraft, with the peak of the frenzy hitting between 1560 and 1660. Slowly, unevenly, the tide began to turn. In France, a key moment came in 1682. After a series of brutal witch hunts, King Louis XIV issued a royal edict that changed everything. It didn't outlaw the belief in witchcraft, but it reclassified the crime. No longer was it a diabolical pact. Now it was treated as fraud and superstition. The death penalty was reserved only for cases that also involved murder or poisoning. This edict effectively ended the era of state-sanctioned witch hunts in France. The story of Jeanne Eschires is a haunting reminder of the human cost of mass hysteria. The accused were not monsters. They were mothers, daughters, healers, and widows. They were ordinary people condemned by extraordinary circumstances. Their trials weren't about justice. They were about scapegoating the vulnerable when fear overcame reason. The flames that consumed Jeanne and her children have long turned to ash, but their memory is a warning. It's a testament to how quickly a community can turn on its own, and a solemn monument to the victims of a dark chapter in our history, one we must never forget. The fate of Jeanne Eschires was not unique. Thousands of women, and even children, were erased by fire, fear, and superstition. But her story is only one piece of Europe's darkest horrors. In our previous video, we uncovered another terrifying chapter, the story of the emperor who starved his own family. Click the link above to watch it and uncover how absolute power turned a ruler into a monster who destroyed his own blood. And don't forget to subscribe, because these voices from history's darkest chapters must never be silenced again.